Good morning. Today I'm joined by FBI Director Chris Wray and remotely by the acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Seth Ducharme, to announce charges against 8 individuals for acting as agents of the People's Republic of China while taking part in an illegal Chinese law enforcement operation known as Fox Hunt. 5 of these individuals were arrested across the country this morning. The rest, we believe, are in China. Since 2014, at the direction of Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping, China has been engaged in a global operation known as Fox Hunt. China describes Fox Hunt as an international anti-corruption campaign in which it seeks to locate legitimate fugitives around the world to bring them back for trial in China. But this is certainly not the whole story, and oftentimes it simply isn't true. Some of these individuals may well be wanted on traditional criminal charges, and some of them may even be guilty. But in many instances, the hunted are opponents of Communist Party Chairman Xi, political rivals, dissidents, critics. And in either event, the operation is a clear violation of the rule of law and international norms. Rather than work with U.S. authorities for assistance with recognized criminal cases, as responsible nations do, China resorts to extra-legal means and unauthorized, often covert, law enforcement operations. Without coordination with our government, China's repatriation squads enter the sovereign territory of the United States, surveil and locate the alleged fugitives, and deploy intimidation and other tactics to force them back into China, where they would face certain imprisonment or worse following illegitimate trials. There are many established ways that rule of law abiding nations conduct international law enforcement activity. This simply isn't one of them. Operation Fox Hunt is just one of many ways in which China disregards the rule of law. China is also known for engaging in, among other things, extrajudicial pretrial custody, re-education camps under the guise of counterterrorism activity, refusal to fulfill its obligations under mutual legal assistance agreements, providing safe haven to criminal enterprises, including massive global hacking campaigns, and detention of foreign citizens for purposes of retaliation or political pressure on those citizens' governments, quite simply put, hostage-taking. With today's charges, we have turned the PRC's Operation Fox Hunt on its head. The hunters became the hunted, the pursuers the pursued. The 5 defendants the FBI arrested this morning on these charges of illegally doing the bidding of the Chinese government now face the prospect of prison. For those charged in China and others engaged in this type of conduct, our message is clear. Stay out. Your behavior is not welcome here. The charges announced today are an unambiguous statement that the United States will not tolerate this type of flagrant conduct on our shores. The Department will continue to champion the rule of law and work with our foreign partners to ensure it is respected throughout the world. The conduct giving rise to this case, investigated by the FBI and prosecuted by the National Security Division and EDNY, was shocking, but standard operating procedure for Operation Fox Hunt. U.S. Attorney Ducharme will provide more details of the alleged crimes, but at its core, this was a large-scale and wide-ranging conspiracy in which several representatives from the Chinese government traveled with the elderly father of the New Jersey-based victim in an effort to threaten him to return to China. The same scheme also included leaving menacing notes on the victim's door, imprisoning the victim's sister in China, and harassing the victim's daughter online. The case is charged in part as a conspiracy to act in the United States as illegal agents of a foreign government. The Department is committed to the aggressive use of this statute, an important tool in our fight against illegal foreign activity here, as well as other national security and criminal tools to combat China's Operation Fox Hunt and any other unauthorized illegal activity within the United States. Before I will turn this over to the FBI Director, I'd like to thank all the prosecutors from the Eastern District and those here at the National Security Division, as well as the FBI agents from around the country that investigated this case and conducted this morning's arrests. No law enforcement organization around the world does more to confront Chinese malign activity than the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Director Wray.
Good morning. Today's charges reflect yet another example of China's ongoing and widespread lawless behavior and our refusal to tolerate it. Simply put, it's outrageous that China thinks it can come to our shores, conduct illegal operations, and bend people here in the United States to their will. In this case, once victims reported China's harassment to the FBI, we began a multi-year investigation in order to bring the perpetrators to justice and vindicate the rule of law. And the FBI is proud to have this investigation culminate in criminal charges, the first of their kind, charges that will help China understand that surveilling, stalking, harassing, and blackmailing our citizens and lawful permanent residents carries serious risks. That message is particularly important because the sad fact is that this was hardly an isolated incident, and China's tactics have been appalling. As Assistant Attorney General Demers described, Fox Hunt is a sweeping bid by General Secretary Xi and the Chinese Communist Party to target Chinese nationals here in the United States and across the world who are viewed as threats to the regime. In another case like this one, when it couldn't locate a Fox Hunt target, Chinese government sent an emissary to visit the victim's family here in the United States. And the message they said to pass on, the target had two options: return to China promptly or commit suicide. And what happens when the Fox Hunt targets do refuse to return to China? Their family members, both here in the United States and in China, have been threatened and coerced, and those back in China have even been arrested for leverage. These are not the actions we would expect from a responsible nation state. Instead, they're more like something we would expect from an organized criminal syndicate. It's important to understand that Fox Hunt is part of the Chinese government's diverse campaign of theft and malign influence. China is violating laws and norms left and right, from sophisticated cyber attacks targeting our data and personal information, to economic espionage targeting our intellectual property and our trade secrets. And they're using that information to gain influence on the world stage, to gain economic and political power, all to their benefit and all very much to our detriment. So we've got to continue doing everything we can to put a stop to it. I want to thank the folks in our Los Angeles, Newark, New York, and New Haven FBI field offices, and I also want to thank all of our partners who helped with this operation. At the FBI, we know we can't do it on our own. We need a whole-of-society response because China is determined to leapfrog the United States and become the dominant global superpower by any means necessary. Now, before I wrap up, I also want to remind you of something I've said time and again. Our concern isn't with the Chinese people or with Chinese Americans. Our concern is with criminal acts committed at the behest of the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. The FBI and our partners throughout the U.S. government will hold China accountable and protect our nation's innovation, ideas, and way of life with the help and vigilance of the American people. I'd like to close by saying that if you believe the Chinese government is targeting you, that you're a potential Fox Hunt victim, please reach out to your local FBI field office. With that, I'll turn it over to the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Seth Ducharme, to discuss the specific defendants and charges in this case. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Director Wray. It's my pleasure to be able to participate in today's announcement with you and AAG. Demers, to my knowledge, this is the first case of its kind, and I think it is significant for a number of reasons. What makes the case really stand out is that it directly involves the efforts of a foreign power to conduct unilateral activity here on U.S. soil in violation of our laws. More specifically, the charges announced today include conspiring to violate 18 U.S.C. 951, which relates to the illegal activity by foreign agents operating in the U.S. without notice or permission of the Attorney General, and conspiring to violate Title 18, United States Code Section 2261, which relates to interstate stalking. I think it's important at the outset to remind everyone, as always, that the charges in the complaint that we filed today are allegations. They're simply that, and that the burden, of course, is on us to prove those allegations beyond a reasonable doubt, and the defendants are, of course, innocent until proven guilty. We're going to litigate this case in a courtroom, but with respect to that burden, it is a burden, we here embrace to prove those facts. Today's arrests of 5 defendants here in the United States arose from a long-term investigation that we've worked collectively with the FBI, our partners in NSD, and a number of other agencies, and we've worked with offices across the country because, unfortunately, the conduct spanned multiple states. With respect to foreign government officials, they frankly have no business operating unilaterally in our country, particularly where their tactics involve intimidation and show no respect for our principles of comity and our procedures. As AAG Demers has explained, today's charges arise out of the People's Republic of China's efforts to use unlawful and frankly, very disturbing tactics to try to repatriate residents of the United States to China as part of a campaign that they call Fox Hunt. Now, the criminal conduct set forth in the complaint that we filed today involves this conspiracy, and it involves people in the United States and people overseas who were working at the behest of government officials in the People's Republic of China, and they were engaged in an international and interstate campaign to threaten, harass, and surveil our victim, who we've referred to as John Doe 1, and we're going to try to do our best to protect the anonymity of that victim. John Doe 1 is a U.S. resident. As a result of this conduct, which occurred over a period of years, unfortunately, and involved operational activity from coast to coast and around the tri-state area, we charged 8 defendants. 5 of them were arrested this morning. As alleged in the complaint, which there's much more detail in the complaint, I'm just going to do my best to summarize that a little bit. The complaint on file is over 40 pages, and it's rich with facts. But essentially what it says is that over a 3-year period, members of the PRC government directed several individuals to engage in unsanctioned and illegal conduct in the United States on behalf of the People's Republic of China for the purpose of coercing a person, John Doe 1, to return to the People's Republic of China. And we believe they did so because John Doe 1 and another victim, his spouse, are alleged by the Chinese government to have committed some violations of Chinese law. But rather than go through the appropriate channels with the U.S. government to pursue those charges, PRC officials, and these defendants in this case, engaged in extrajudicial conduct that really violates not only U.S. law, but the types of norms and principles of comity that we would expect from a foreign government. The charged conspiracy involved efforts to pressure John Doe 1 directly, and also by taking actions that affected his family members, including his wife, his adult daughter, and other family members who resided in the United States and some who resided overseas in China. The effort was sustained, relentless, over years. It involved some discreet acts to frighten, intimidate, and coerce John Doe, and it involved some shockingly overt acts. It involved surveillance, including, we believe, with the use of night vision goggles. Involved leaving threatening notes on the victim's doors, and I think perhaps most distressingly, targeting the victim's daughter. The efforts also involved seeking the assistance of a U.S.-based private investigator to bend him to the will of this unlawful mission. To get into just a few of the specifics, one of the notes read, for example, quote, "If you are willing to go back to the mainland and spend 10 years in prison, your wife and children will be safe and all right. That's the end of the matter."